Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. Are you ready for a deep dive?
I sure am.
Let's dive into a story that's as gripping as any thriller.
Oh, I like thrillers.
This is a true story, though.
Even better.
The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster.
It's a story where a seemingly ordinary day in Japan, back in 2011, transformed into a fight for survival.
Against unimaginable forces.
Yeah.
Okay, so picture this. March 11th, a Friday.
Friday.
People going about their day, completely unaware of the impending catastrophe. Then, without warning, the Earth starts to shake violently.
An earthquake.
A colossal 9.0 magnitude earthquake.
Wow.
It rips through the ocean floor off the coast of Japan.
9.0. That's huge.
It was so powerful.
Yeah.
It actually shifted the entire island of Honshu eastward by 8 feet.
I had no idea it was that strong.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom.
Yeah.
So this massive earthquake hits, and what happens at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant?
Well, the plant was designed to withstand earthquakes. And thankfully, the reactors automatically shut down as they were supposed to.
Okay, good.
But this was just the prelude to a far greater danger.
Oh, no. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, I'm ready.
Tell me more.
The earthquake triggered a monstrous tsunami.
A tsunami.
Waves as high as 46 feet.
46 feet?
Some even higher came crashing down on the Japanese coastline.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine the sheer force of that.
No, it's hard to comprehend.
Did the plant stand a chance?
The plant's seawall was designed to withstand a tsunami,
Okay.
but not one of this magnitude.
Oh.
The waves just surged over the defenses, flooding critical infrastructure.
So the tsunami was the real knockout punch.
Exactly.
It wasn't just the earthquake itself.
Yeah, the earthquake caused the reactors to shut down safely,
Okay.
but the tsunami crippled the plant's backup power systems.
The backup power system.
Specifically, the emergency diesel generators.
Okay.
Or EDGs for short.
ED
These generators were essential for keeping the reactors cool, even after they were shut down.
Wait, hold on. Didn't nuclear power plants have, tons of safety measures in place for situations like this?
Oh, they do?
What happened to those backups?
You're right.
Yeah.
Nuclear power plants are designed with multiple layers of safety systems.
Okay.
And Fukushima was no exception.
Yeah.
But in this case,
Yeah.
the sheer force of nature overwhelmed those defenses one by one.
One by one. It's like dominoes.
Kind of.
Okay, let's break it down.
Okay.
What went wrong with the backup generators?
All of the seawater pumps that were crucial for cooling the EDGs were located on the shoreline.
Right on the shoreline.
Yep, when the tsunami hit,
Yeah.
those pumps were the first to go.
Oh, no.
They were completely submerged and destroyed by the waves.
Okay, so no pumps, no cooling, no backup power for the reactors.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not good.
I'm starting to see how this chain reaction unfolded.
Yeah.
How many of these backup generators were taken out?
The tsunami disabled a staggering 10 out of 13
10 out of 13.
of the plant's backup power sources.
Wow. So the plant was left extremely vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
What happened next?
The plant workers were now in a desperate race against time.
A race against time.
They knew that without those backup generators, the reactors would start to overheat.
This sounds like a real-life ticking time bomb scenario.
Doesn't it?
Tell me more about what the workers did to try and save the plant.
Well, they knew they had limited time.
How much time?
About 8 hours.
8 hours.
Before their DC battery backups would be drained.
Okay.
So they tried everything to extend the life of those batteries.
Okay.
While frantically searching for ways to restore power.
So they had to make those batteries last as long as possible.
As long as possible, yeah.
And what about those reactors?
Yeah.
Each one was facing its own set of challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Like they weren't all the same.
No, each reactor was unique.
Oh.
It was a chaotic scene, with workers scrambling to understand the extent of the damage and to come up with solutions for each individual reactor unit.
Okay, so multiple problems all at once.
Yeah, a lot to deal with.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into the Fukushima disaster, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future episodes on Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast.
That's right.
We've got more captivating stories coming your way.
We do.
All right, now back to the reactors.
Okay.
Tell me what was happening with each one.
All right.
Let's start with Unit 1.
Okay, Unit 1 initially offered a glimmer of hope.
A glimmer of hope?
Yeah, it had a passive safety system called an isolation condenser.
Okay, an isolation condenser, what's that?
Which uses steam pressure to drive cooling without the need for external power.
Wow, okay.
It actually worked for a while.
Really? So it was doing its job?
It was.
Okay.
But the sheer scale of the situation eventually overwhelmed it.
It just couldn't keep up.
Exactly.
So what did they do when the isolation condenser failed?
They had to resort to desperate measures.
Desperate measures?
Yeah.
Like what?
They used fire trucks to pump water into the reactor.
Fire trucks?
Yeah.
In an attempt to keep it cool.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Imagine the pressure those workers were under,
Oh, yeah.
trying to prevent a full-blown meltdown using whatever tools they could find.
Right.
It sounds incredibly dangerous.
It was.
Was that enough to stabilize Unit 1?
Unfortunately, no. To make matters worse,
Oh, no.
a hydrogen explosion rocked the unit, damaging the containment structure.
A hydrogen explosion?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
When the reactor's fuel rods overheated,
Okay.
they reacted with the water,
Uh-huh.
producing hydrogen gas.
Oh.
The buildup of this gas eventually led to the explosion.
Wow, so this explosion further complicated their efforts to cool the reactor.
For sure.
Okay, so Unit 1 was in critical condition.
Definitely.
What about Unit 2? How was that one holding up?
Unit 2 faced the most dire situation of all.
The most dire.
It was the only reactor that experienced a complete loss of both AC and DC power.
Oh, wow. Both.
However, there was a surprising twist.
Oh, a twist. Okay.
Its reactor core isolation cooling system, or RCIC,
RCIC.
which is designed to run for only a few hours,
Uh-huh.
kept functioning for over 2 days.
Over 2 days.
I know, it's incredible.
That's incredible. It sounds like a small miracle in the midst of all this chaos.
Yeah, it really was.
Wow.
It was a testament to the system's design
Mhm.
and the resilience of those operating it.
Okay.
But even the RCIC eventually couldn't hold on.
Oh, no.
It finally succumbed to coolant depletion.
So they lost their last line of defense for Unit 2.
Pretty much.
What happened then?
Faced with the imminent threat of containment failure,
Containment failure.
the workers had to make a tough call.
Oh, wow.
They decided to deliberately vent the reactor to release some of the pressure.
Deliberately vent it.
Yeah, it was risky, but it was the best option.
So this bought them precious time, allowing them to inject seawater into the reactor to cool it down.
Exact.
Seawater. Isn't that dangerous to use in a nuclear reactor?
Is an absolute last resort.
Oh,
Seawater is corrosive
Yeah.
and can damage the reactor components,
so not ideal.
but it was the only option they had left to prevent a complete meltdown.
It sounds like they were fighting a losing battle.
In many ways, they were.
What was the status of the remaining reactors at this point?
Well, Unit 3 was also in a precarious state.
Unit 3.
They managed to maintain some DC power initially,
Oh, okay, so there was some power.
and they even got replacement batteries from a neighboring power station.
Wow, they were really trying everything.
They activated multiple cooling systems, the RCIC, the high-pressure coolant injection, or HPCI, and the fire protection system.
So they had backups for the backups.
But one by one, these systems also failed.
Oh no, come on.
The fuel rods in Unit 3 became uncovered,
Uncovered.
and the workers feared another hydrogen explosion.
Another explosion.
They had to evacuate.
Evacuate, so they just had to leave it.
It was too dangerous to stay.
3 reactors down. What a nightmare. What about the remaining reactors?
Unit 4 was actually offline for maintenance at the time,
Offline.
which was a blessing in disguise.
Oh, okay.
However, its spent fuel pool, where used fuel rods are stored, still posed a significant threat.
So even though Unit 4 was offline, it wasn't entirely out of the woods.
Right.
What happened there?
A hydrogen explosion did occur in Unit 4,
Another explosion.
likely caused by hydrogen gas migrating from Unit 3.
Oh, wow, so it spread.
It was a terrifying moment, but thankfully it was determined that enough water remained in the spent fuel pool to prevent a major disaster.
That's a small relief in an otherwise dire situation. What about Units 5 and 6?
Units 5 and 6 were the relative success stories in this whole ordeal.
Success stories. Real
Unit 5 was undergoing a pressure test, and Unit 6 was offline, so their cooling needs were less critical.
Okay, so they were in a better position from the start.
Thanks to one operational EDG, they were both brought to a cold shutdown relatively quickly.
So 2 out of 6 reactors managed to avoid a major catastrophe. It's hard to believe how much unfolded in such a short amount of time.
It was an unprecedented event.
Yeah.
The combination of a massive earthquake and tsunami created a perfect storm that overwhelmed the plant's defenses.
And then there's the invisible threat radiation. What do we know about the radioactive releases from Fukushima?
Primarily, cesium-137, iodine-131, and xenon-133 were released into the atmosphere.
And those are all bad.
It's important to understand that even small amounts of these radioactive isotopes can have a significant impact.
Speaking of impact, this disaster wasn't just contained to the facility, right? What happened beyond the plant itself?
Absolutely not. The release of radioactive material forced the evacuation of over 150,000 people from the surrounding area.
150,000
It
people.
was a massive evacuation.
Can you describe what that evacuation was like?
It was a chaotic and frightening experience for many people.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Imagine the fear and uncertainty they must have felt, being forced to leave their homes with little notice, not knowing what the future held.
That's terrifying.
There were communication breakdowns, multiple relocations,
So it wasn't just a one-time thing.
and, tragically, even deaths attributed to the evacuation process itself.
There are deaths during the evacuation.
It was a very stressful and difficult situation.
It's heartbreaking to think of the long-term consequences for those who lived near the plant.
Indeed. The evacuees have faced lasting mental health impacts, including heightened anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
PTSD from the evacuation.
Many have lost their homes, their livelihoods, their sense of community, and then there's the immense financial burden on the Japanese government, which is still grappling with the cost of cleanup and compensation.
And the Fukushima disaster didn't just impact Japan. It sent shockwaves around the world, didn't it?
It absolutely did. The disaster led to a major shift in global energy policies.
Really? How so?
Some countries accelerated plans to phase out nuclear power altogether, while others doubled down on nuclear, emphasizing the need for even stricter safety measures.
So it had a polarizing effect.
The debate over nuclear energy was reignited with a new intensity.
It's a stark reminder that even with all our technological advancements, we're still vulnerable to the raw power of nature. And sometimes our best efforts to harness that power can have unintended and devastating consequences.
It's a sobering thought.
It really is.
And it leads us to some important questions about the future.
Like what?
What does the future hold for those thousands of displaced residents? Many are still unable to return to their homes.
Right. And how will Japan and the world approach nuclear energy going forward? Will we see more investment in alternative energy sources? Or will the need for reliable, carbon-free energy push us back towards nuclear?
These are precisely the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves. Fukushima wasn't just a disaster for Japan, it was a wake-up call for the entire planet.
A wake-up call to carefully consider the risks and benefits of the technologies we rely on, to invest in research and development of safer, more sustainable energy sources, and perhaps most importantly, to never forget the lessons learned from this tragic event.
Exactly. And speaking of lessons learned, one aspect that really stands out to me is the incredible bravery and dedication of the plant workers who risked their lives to try and contain the disaster.
Oh yeah, those folks are heroes. They stayed behind in incredibly dangerous conditions, trying to prevent a full-blown meltdown. Can you tell me more about what they did?
They faced unimaginable pressure and danger.
Right.
Remember, they were dealing with multiple reactor failures, hydrogen explosions,
Right.
and the constant threat of radiation exposure.
It must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
They were working around the clock
Around the clock.
in makeshift conditions,
Wow.
using whatever resources they could scrounge up.
Like what?
Even car batteries at one point,
Car battery.
to try and restore power and keep those reactors cool.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is.
Wow.
Their actions,
Yeah.
often taken with little or no guidance from above,
They were just doing what they could.
undoubtedly prevented an even worse catastrophe.
Wow. They're true heroes.
Absolutely.
It makes you realize that even in the midst of such a large-scale disaster, it's the individual acts of courage and ingenuity that can make all the difference.
It's really inspiring.
So what can we learn from Fukushima to prevent similar disasters in the future?
I think one key takeaway is the importance of humility.
Humility.
We need to acknowledge that even our most sophisticated technologies can fail,
That's true.
and we need to design our systems with that in mind.
Okay.
That means building in multiple layers of redundancy,
Okay.
robust safety protocols,
Right.
and a culture of vigilance.
So it sounds like it's not just about the technical aspects,
No,
but also about fostering a culture of safety and accountability.
exactly. We need to encourage critical thinking,
Right.
questioning assumptions,
Right?
and speaking up when potential risks are identified.
Being proactive.
Yeah, Fukushima was a wake-up call,
Yeah.
a reminder that we can never afford to be complacent when it comes to safety.
Especially when dealing with technologies that have the potential to cause widespread harm.
Right.
You mentioned that the story of Fukushima is still unfolding.
It is.
What are some of the ongoing challenges?
One of the biggest challenges is the remediation of the Fukushima site and the surrounding areas.
Remediation.
This is a massive undertaking that will likely take decades to complete.
Decades. Wow.
It's a long process.
What does that remediation process involve?
It's a multifaceted effort that includes decontaminating land and water,
Okay.
decommissioning the damaged reactors,
Right.
and safely storing the vast amounts of radioactive waste.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It is.
What are some of the specific challenges they're facing?
Well, one major challenge is dealing with the contaminated water that continues to accumulate at the site.
The water.
They're using a complex filtration system to remove most of the radioactive materials,
Uh-huh.
but there's still debate about what to do with the treated water.
Oh, I see. So even after it's treated, it's still a problem.
Yeah, it's a sensitive issue.
I can imagine that's a controversial issue.
It is.
Okay.
There are also concerns about the long-term environmental impacts of the disaster.
Environmental impacts.
Scientists are studying the effects of radiation on marine life
Oh, right.
and the potential for contamination to spread through the food chain.
So there's still a lot of uncertainty about the long-term consequences.
Yes, and that uncertainty adds to the anxiety and stress for those who were affected by the disaster.
It's understandable.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation.
It's clear that Fukushima presents a unique set of challenges.
It does.
But are there any signs of progress or hope?
Absolutely.
Oh, good, Ed.
Despite the immense challenges,
Mhm.
there are glimmers of hope.
Like,
For one,
Yeah.
technology for dealing with nuclear waste is constantly improving.
that's good to hear.
There are new methods being developed for vitrifying the waste,
Vitrifying.
essentially turning it into glass,
Turning it into glass.
which makes it much safer and easier to store.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a promising technology.
That's encouraging. What about the decontamination efforts? Are they making progress?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good.
The Japanese government has set ambitious goals for decontaminating affected areas,
Oh.
and while it's a slow and painstaking process,
Right.
they are making headway
Yeah.
in some areas.
Yeah.
People are starting to return to their homes,
Oh, wow. That's great.
and life is slowly returning to a semblance of normalcy.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, it's a sign of progress.
It sounds like there's still a long road ahead,
Uh-huh.
but there's reason to be optimistic about the future of Fukushima and the surrounding communities.
I agree.
Okay.
And I think this story ultimately highlights the power of human resilience
Yeah.
and our capacity to learn from even the most devastating of experiences.
It's a reminder that even in the face of profound challenges, we have the ability to adapt,
Yes.
innovate,
Mhm.
and rebuild.
And to learn.
And perhaps most importantly, to use those experiences to create a safer and more sustainable future.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you.
The story of Fukushima is a complex and multifaceted one,
Uh-huh.
full of tragedy, heroism, and ongoing challenges.
It really is.
It's a story that compels us to grapple with difficult questions about risk,
Yeah.
responsibility,
Uh-huh.
and the limits of our technological prowess.
Important questions to consider.
But it's also a story that inspires us with examples of human resilience,
Yes.
ingenuity,
For sure.
and the enduring power of hope.
It's a story of hope.
It's a story that we'll continue to unpack and learn from for years to come.
I think so too.
Indeed. And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating, isn't it?
I think so.
We delve into these complex and challenging topics,
Mhm.
exploring the nuances and the multiple perspectives, and hopefully
Mm.
we all come away with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
That's the goal.
Absolutely. And that's what Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast is all about.
What's it about?
Bringing you captivating stories that inform, inspire, and provoke thought.
I like it.
So until next time,
Until next time.
keep those minds curious and those hearts open to the endless possibilities of learning and discovery.
Good advice.
And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into another fascinating topic.
Don't miss it.
Thanks for joining us on Tell Me More.